Well guys, I was cleaning and reorganizing a bit down here in the basement when I came across this box which contains something got a few years ago and it kind of forgotten about. And it directly relates to the Predicta holiday. So yes, the chassis is all there. Certainly could be restored. However, what I have in this box is another Predicta holiday chassis. I believe I bought it from one of my YouTube viewers a few years back, a reasonable price, and well, I got to thinking that it's in a bit better condition than the one that's currently in that cabinet, but also it's got something a little bit different. It has the UHF tuner, and I happen to have a spare knob for a UHF tuner on a Predicta, which are really hard to come by. So what got me thinking is, since this set started out as a mess, why don't I have a little fun and do a bit of an upgrade? So yeah, it's still got the wrong picture tube in there, and the neck sticks out a little too far. I don't have the back cover for the CRT housing. So why not have a little fun? So what I'll need to do, I believe, is simply drill a hole in the side of the cabinet to accommodate the UHF tuner. So UHF tuner is a separate module, completely self-enclosed. I think there's one tube inside there, or it might be completely solid state. I'll have to look at the service info. So where this also comes into play is this filament dropper resistor here. This one actually looks to be in pretty decent condition. These are usually bad, and this one may very well be bad, but at least it's all here. So there are several taps in here. Well, one of those taps is for the UHF option. So I've done a number of these chassis in other videos for holiday, Predicta pedestal, Predicta tandem, well, basically this type of chassis. Well, this one will finally make use of that tap. And so what is that tap all about? Well, so there's a pilot light here for the UHF tuner, so that goes off the tap. And I had to dig up service info. I think there might be a tube in here. It's got to be, and if there is, it's got to be like a 2AF4 or 6AF4. That's a small triode designed for UHF operation. Otherwise, it's like I said, it's in really good shape. No corrosion. The thermistor has fallen out, which is a very common problem. There should be a black disc in here. This is a part of the filament dropping circuit as well. Provides a soft start when you turn the set on. Got a bit of an issue here with the on-off control. This is probably a replacement. Doesn't look quite like any original I've seen. It's a common problem with the push-on, push-off switch failing, but maybe I can borrow the one from that set. Otherwise, I think I might have a spare, or I can rig something up at any rate. But otherwise, I think it is all original. Certainly, I don't see any work having been done on the underside whatsoever. And on the top side, I noticed that somebody had started to take the board out. Oh, man, much further than I realized. So I saw that some of the wires were still attached. I see what they did. So we've got all these stakes on here with the wires attached. If you watched any of my Predicta videos, you've seen me talk about that ad nauseum. So they left them attached along this side and just undid them on the others, along the other side, so you could tilt this up to work on it. Interesting strategy. I've done enough of these that I can almost do this with my eyes closed to reattach the wires. And I think it's easier to work on with it completely removed, so I'll probably go ahead and remove all the rest of the wires. So I can get this completely out. But just taking a quick glance at it, other than this tube being bent over and some tubes missing, all the components on it are original. Same goes for the rest of this. So I think this is extremely restorable. Just take a quick look here at the flyback as well. Here's a look inside the high voltage box, and that may be the nicest Predicta flyback I've ever seen. And I know people love to rag on Predictas about them overheating and the flyback's always failing, yada yada. Pretty much all late 50s TV flybacks look like that. That's a wax coating they put on them. Over time, they crack, and over time, some heat's generated, and there'll be a pool of wax underneath. Extremely common, nothing to do with Predicta design. Also doesn't mean they're bad. Simplest fix, well, you could just leave it alone. It probably worked fine for many years. Or if chunks of the coating have fallen off, paint on some Corona dope, which is sort of like nail polish, and that it's a fast drying kind of lacquer-like substance. Comes in a little bottle of kind of like nail polish with a brush built into the top cap. Unscrew it, paint it on, dries fast. It's rated to have a really high voltage insulation. Easy fix. So here's, now you get a better look at this too. Oh, so here's the UHF tuner. And there's the tube. It's on top. I don't know why I was expecting it to be below. But, so on the back, we've got two sets of antenna terminals. VHF, UHF. UHF goes directly into this tuner, which has a tube up here. I'm sure it's a part of the AF4 family. And the tuning is done by variable capacitor. It's just a continuously variable selector from channels 14 to 88. And the knob for this has a vernier action, like a 10-to-1. So as you turn it, it slowly goes to the channels. There is no click. You just have to watch the screen while you tune it in and try to find your channel. And here's another look at that board. So they undid the wires going along this side, and they undid all the grounding stakes on the board. Undid some of the wires along here and up top, so the whole thing can tilt out. But still not the easiest thing to work on, trying to get a soldering iron in from down here. So I'll just go ahead and remove the rest of these. Just blow through the whole board and replace all that stuff. Be interesting maybe to power it up as is. However, I have to reconnect the wires, and I just don't want to bother. So yeah, you guys are always asking about Predicta videos. I've done a bunch of them, especially this particular chassis, so I thought I'd try to make things a little more interesting by doing the UHF version of it. I went ahead and removed the main board, and I'm starting to work on it already. Now, I've already done several in-depth videos on recapping this particular board, so I'm only just going to very briefly show a couple things here. One is how I get these parts out without damaging the circuit board. I clip them out from the top, leave a little bit of the lead sticking out. So we've got a little bit of the lead right there, for example. And if you look on the other side, they're typically bent over a little bit. So what I do is I heat it from the bottom and push down from the top until it falls out. So it's this guy right here. Push from the other side, and there we go. And usually, as I push through the hole, it unclogs it, so I don't have to use a solder sucker or anything like that. Okay, there we go. So the hole is opened up, so I can just stick the new lead right through it and solder it. No solder wick, no solder sucker, no stress on the PCB. Piece of cake. Making some good progress on the board, and I did have to replace one of the 7-pin sockets. The top wafer had shattered. And it turns out that I'm out of the 9-pin sockets, so I ordered up a bunch more. I got them from surplus sales in Nebraska. They are drop-in replacements that have thicker metal. They're about $1.50 a piece. So I'll have to wait for those to arrive. Meanwhile, I'll keep working on that board, and I know some of you are often wondering, hey, are those caps I am replacing wholesale actually bad? Well, let's check some of them. So this is a 0.0015 microfarad cap that should be good for 1,000 volts. It's in the vertical oscillator. It feeds back a pulse from the vertical output transformer. It's a high voltage pulse. This is a common failure point in these sets. So, let's see how this one fares. Starting to see some leakage at just 400 volts. And quite a bit more at only 500. And this is supposed to be good for 1,000. Alright, let's check another one. This is a 0.0033, also known as 3,300 picofarads. Should be good for 600 volts. Look at that, it's already starting to leak at just 300. By the way, how do I know it's good for 600, or should be? Well, service info, but also blue band, blue 6, and the resistor color code, 600 volts. Leaks like a sieve at 500. Alright, let's check one of these big guys. Brown, looks grayish, but it's black. And yellow, so that is a 100,000 picofarad, also known as 0.1 microfarad cap, should be good for 400 volts. Look at that, leaky at just 200. All these caps are bad. That's why I'm replacing all of them. Alright, some timely packages have arrived, but before I get into those, I just realized there's been a major problem with this board staring me at the face ever since I first looked at this chassis. But I'm not going to tell you what it is. If anybody's got a guess, leave it in the comments section. Now, as for packages, so made an order with surplus sales in Nebraska for some tube sockets. These are a perfect match for the ones on this board, but they have a little bit more robust metal on them. So let's see if we can compare the two. So the actual metal bands are a bit wider. At discoloration, that's actually molded into the plastic. I don't know if they use scrap plastic to make these. I've ordered them a few times. They all look like this, but they're very good quality sockets. A little bit tricky to get these out. The pins look like this. They're pretty thick, and they are split, and they kind of snap into the holes in the PCB. Then they fill the split up with solder, so I use a lot of solder wick. I break the socket apart on the other side and carefully work them out. There is a center pin on these, but I don't think it's used on the 9-pin sockets. There may be just one or two. Serves as a bit of a ground shield, I suppose, between the pins. Alright, so that's that. And to round out my order, I ordered up a fresh bottle of Corona dope because my old bottle had dried out. This is what I use to recoat the flybacks. Or not recoat, I leave the existing cracked wax on them, or if it's a piece is just hanging off, I'll take it off, but I don't want to stress out the flybacks too much. And then I coat them with this stuff. In the past, I've used special high temperature silicone, which works fine, but so does this, more readily available. The only issue I've got with this stuff is it's very volatile, and once you open up this cap, break the seal, it's tough to reseal it. I've wrapped electrical tape around it and such, and eventually all these solvents seem to leak out and it hardens up, so that's why I got another bottle. And now on to the best of all, reproduction networks from the TV Restorer guy. These are created by another very devoted, enthusiastic restorer of vintage TVs and radios. He's the guy I mentioned a while ago who was working on a Philco radio, the desktop one, the 49901 with the roller wheel on it. He gave me some tips on that. This came out really nice. We've kind of been watching each other's restorations for a while now. And I've made my own reproduction networks in a variety of techniques in the past. Well, now that I know it can be done, I know how to do it, I'm happy to let somebody else create them for me. And he did a real nice job. Another thing I wanted to show you guys is this. I think I've shown these once or twice before. I've got a number of them for Philcos throughout the 50s. These are mini service guides. I love these things. Once you get fairly familiar with a set and you don't want to drag out all the service info, but you need a little bit of reminder, these are great. So let's find this one in particular. So it's only a few pages, but boy, they really cover everything. So here is the whole chassis. So here is this board we're working on right now. Yes, it's small. Get out your reading glasses, but everything is labeled, including all those stakes where the wire wrap wires go, with labels like L6U, and then you can line that up on the schematic. So all around this dash perimeter, so this board here is represented inside this dashed line in the schematic, and they label all the external connection points. So there's L6U right there. So good aid to have. So there's the full schematic, sans the tuner, and they also have parts locator. Very clearly labeled. And I think there's a little bit more. There's the tuner, and there's the IF board. Let's see what else. Oh, that's a different model there. So it's not super detailed, but it's got all the basic stuff you might possibly need, and they go into the L38, which is for the tandem set. So I definitely keep this out on the workbench, like so, while I'm working on this. And then this has the later sets, like the Siestas covered in this. So I am going to get back to this, start or complete restuffing the board, and if you've got any thoughts on what major issue is staring me in the face, please leave your guess in the comments section.